Michael C. Ford has been thrilling audiences with his finely crafted verbiage since the June 1969 reading in the company of Jim Morrison and several Andy Warhol factory workers. Mentored by Kenneth Rexroth and Kenneth Patchen, the redoubtable Mr. Ford has a stack of well-regarded books and CDs in his catalog. He was nominated for a Grammy, it says in his credits, in 1897, but I tend to think that's not the right year. In 1997, for Language Commando, a spoken word 12-inch LP vinyl disc, yes, when they had those. His 1998 book of selected poems, Emergency Exits, was honored with a Pulitzer Prize nomination. So not only do we have our first electric guitar, our first real rock and roller, we also have our first Pulitzer Prize nominee. See, there's a reason to let boys in the room. His narrative titled Vietnam Peace Casualties was nominated for a 2006 Pushcart Prize. Other CDs include Fire Escapes and 20th Century Goodbye. His vast trove of works also includes his last 4 documents: the Marilyn Monroe Concerto, the Demented Chauffeur, Las Vegas Quartet, To Kiss the Blood Off Your Hands, which were all published by the Iron Drive Publishing Company. I think his most heralded credit, however, was when he read with moi at Eve Branstein's Poetry in Motion, where I had the pleasure of hearing him read, and now you will too. Ladies, please welcome Pulitzer Prize nominee, Michael C. Ford. I'm going to mic you up.
Yeah.
Look, pick your head up a second. Okay, there you go.
Oh, really? Am I set? You know, Vicki has a kind of a pet name for me. She calls me Mr. Acquired Taste. Well, that's a compliment, isn't it? I thought, and no, of course not. I think what I'll do is begin with this piece called The Party, because I think it has a lot to do with the way writers sometimes feel about their work, and this is what it sounds like to me. One day, a life-threatening illness canceled me out, and I straight away go to heaven. There I was in this enormous reception room, surrounded by hundreds of new arrivals. A bottomless cup of hot chocolate, no coffee allowed. The bosses in paradise considered caffeine to be unhealthy. Momentarily, feeling a tug on my sleeve, I turned to a guy with a scruffy beard, long hair, wearing a flowing white robe, undoubtedly Jesus, who was saying, "Hey, you're the one who put me in that poem about Britney Spears." I mean, imagine how thrilled and how flattered I was. My name in the same poem with Britney Spears. I mean, it just killed me. I gazed back into his Semitic black olive eyes, which were full of forgiveness. And with need for a smattering of redemption, I answered, yes, composing poems like that eventually killed me too. Oh, God. How we do that for true. Oh. You can save the wear and tear on the palms of your hands, and wait until I read something. I really deserve your applause, and you know, that might happen. It might occur. I'm going to read something from the book that Vicki mentioned. This would be the Emergency Exits selected work, and one of the poems for me come out of personal experience and things that I read and things that I see, I observe outside of myself. I not very often appear in my own work. And a lot of the voice that is great within us, kind of academic poets, might not find me in heavy favor. But I was in Providence, Rhode Island, and it was at Brown University. I was staying overnight with the poet in residence and her family. And I was up really early, and I heard the newspaper hit the door, and I opened the door, and I picked up the Providence Journal, which is the morning paper. And there was the usual headline with the President of the United States doing something crazy, and a little picture of Rita Hayworth, you know, the iconic film goddess. And up above a little kind of a heading, it said, Rita Hayworth declared mentally incompetent. Yeah. This is like 1981. So. Now, she wasn't really, you know, and at that time they didn't identify what was really happening to her. But I thought, declared mentally incompetent, whoa, write that down and tuck it away. And when I was on a train to Albuquerque, I wrote this, and it was published later on. Eventually shows up in this book, Emergency Exits. And so this is titled, Rita Hayworth has been declared mentally incompetent. I know what it must be like, movie star, waking up with a fear every morning. It must be even more difficult, having never in your stunning career been able to portray one of those Hemingway women, at once heroic, invulnerable. For you, it was proving only angels have wings, and now you try to sprout your own 30 years later in your dementia. When you were a lady from Shanghai, you took the wheel from Orson Welles, and now you wish it were only a lame husband trying to drive you crazy, I bet. Long ago and far away, you were a cover girl, whose maybe fortunes were concealed in oysters nightly served by Edward Brophy off Broadway. Gary Cooper might have come to Cordura envisioning you as Earth Mother of the battlefront, but I was graduating from prep school and taking Technicolor trips to nowhere. I loved you best as Sadie Thompson, bringing the Reverend to his knees better than Vespers. Now I love whatever I'm able to project beyond all you once projected in a wall of fantastic, semantic subterfuge. I believe I love you beyond beauty because your psychiatric doctors have authorized my feelings for you now. Oh. I realize, Rita, I've probably always loved you for your mind. Oh, wow. Part of my tour through the Southwest earlier this year was to read from my book, The Demented Chauffeur, and other mysteries, not in other poems. I don't think since the selected, the word poetry or poem has appeared on any of my documents. And there's a reason for that. I haven't come up with it yet, but there is a reason for that. I think poetry is a really loaded word, and a lot of people misconstrue it. But the Demented Chauffeur is basically dealing with American crime. Crime in America, meaning, well, there are two sections. Moving pictures, which is really crime as it's depicted in motion pictures. And the second section is moving violations, which is crime as I found it in American tabloids, 6 o'clock news, 7 o'clock news, 8 o'clock news, all the o'clock news. And also, I started looking at 1950s True Detective magazines, Startling Detective, Headquarters Detective, and Spicy Detective, all of these, and found some really interesting things. What I've chosen to read for you guys is the poem where I talk about O.J. Simpson. Like I say, a lot of these crimes were unsolved. The Kennedy assassination, the Black Dahlia, and of course the O.J. Simpson. The thing about I remember Norman Mailer getting angry with his wife. They had a fight, and he took a butter knife and stabbed her in the shoulder. And they said, "Norman, how could you do something like that?" And Norman Mailer said, "When you use a knife, that means there's some love left." Absolutely true. That's what he said. So I'm thinking O.J. Simpson used a bayonet. He must have really loved his ex-wife. I was just really. This is not to chastise or accuse the perpetrator here, but to examine how we treat our justice system and how the people in our justice system abuse it. And this is called, "Is this the O.J. show or just another mojo show?" Surely it's a setup for media greedmongers to get greased by a blitz of lies, gossip, fabrication, innuendo. Now the nation was in more sinister division than it was during 12 years of slaughter in Vietnam. There's been no real celebrity high-roller murder defendant more visible in Hollywood history since Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle allegedly raped Virginia Rapé, the Sunbonnet Girl, and in the process killed her with a violently inserted Coca-Cola bottle in 1921. So this 70 years later, this iconic sports hero, after proving to America just how much it hurts to rent a car, after police interrogation for 9 previous incidents of spousal battering, and after becoming a reticent candidate for felony homicide conviction, this former football grunt gets a battery of deal-maker lawyers wearing $2,000 Armani suits in order to more formally, with an air of cynical sophistication, contaminate the criminal justice system, traveling by chauffeur-driven limo through the punished streets of racist paranoia. All this taxpayer monopoly game, do not pass go, go to jail, with arguments of no weapon, no witnesses, no case. Well, I could have done that for him wearing bib overalls and driving to the goddamn courthouse in a Chevy flatbed. No, 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 no. The whole bad bit is that if somehow this had happened to some cat living on welfare checks in South Central, he would have been lynched from a lamppost on the corner of Florence and Normandy. Because in the scheme of things, in the scam of things, how could a tackling dummy who once upon a time carried a football the length of a gridiron in 9.5 possibly be guilty of anything? Yes, I am proud to live in a country where pigskin is more favored and more honored, more adored and more idolized than the human skin of a slaughtered daughter or a decimated son. And the fool even left a blood trail Angela Lansbury could have followed. Following... You guys are great. Following 57 minutes after the first commercial. Now the nation may survey the exhibition of bloodsucker hustlers, an exhibition of one media vampire after another who just happen to be with neither the brains nor intrinsic imaginations to compose words which would maybe contribute something sacred to the world culture. Instead, they're contracting $500,000 book deals, and the same no-talent, no-load, sandbagging barracudas are feeding off American tabloid television-treated sewage. And all because of it all, there's this exhibition for the standard creeps, the socio-pathological, voyeuristic keyhole peepers who never stop paying such solicitous attention to artificially arranged trash, we can still see it hanging upside down inside media museums of the damned. Going to this book of mine called "To Kiss the Blood Off Our Hands." All of the images in this book are lifted from black and white movies, sometimes German expressionist filmmakers called film noir, and all of the images are coming out of late 1940s, early 1950s crime dramas. And I got to tell you this side story. I made a guy in a magazine. I said, "Hey, it would be nice if you guys could review this." He said, "Why don't you write your own review? Just review the book and say how great it is, and people will buy it." I said, "Wait a minute. Let me get this straight. You want me to write a review and say how magnetic and compelling it is, so that people will go out and buy it?" He said, "Yeah, that's the idea." And I said, I don't know how to do that. And then I thought, why don't I write my own review? So here's my review of "To Kiss the Blood Off Our Hands." This poet does not compare with the poetry prize mongering literary parasites and poet laureate foppery we in the literary hierarchy hold in such high esteem. No, the only way to treat poets with this specialized integrity is with a good old-fashioned crucifixion. Get your hammers and nails ready, boys, because this self-styled rebel writer has to be neutralized. What Mr. Ford's poetry seems to signify is that suburban vistas are to be continually thought of as not so much better looking than their cities, but as they are brutalized by urban renewal, that we might with facility feel more sentimental about them. His analytical cynicism and cryptic analysis of our culture would ask us to believe that poetry, indeed all forms of contemporary art, have been for the last 30 years under the cruel domination of computerized aesthetes, uninspired university English department marionettes, and effete New York publishing mafia and sociopathological dilettantes. You mean like it isn't? Okay. Oh, okay. His most energetic work seems to suggest that we as a nation of artists, should be so much more enlightened if we were able to contort ourselves into the position of his conclusion that life is simply not worth living. You know, I was... What, one more minute? Well, oh, okay. Well, then, one more poem. Okay. I'll read something from the To Kiss the Blood Off Our Hands document. This goes back to my friendship with Dorothy McGuire, who is an actress of impeccable taste and was so important to me. Let me just... She was on Broadway in a play called Claudia, and they were going to make a movie out of it. And she told me the story. And Robert Young said, usually when somebody does Broadway, they want somebody in Hollywood. They want star power, you know, to do the Broadway play. So when she came out, Robert Young said, "I'm not going to do the movie unless Dorothy does it." And that's how she got that launched her career. Tree Grows in Brooklyn, Academy Award. I mean, she was phenomenal. And so I wrote this in tribute to her, and I was reading it at the Vine Street Bar and Grill. And this is one of the serendipitous things, one of these moments that comes out of something that's so off the wall, and it turns out that the woman who was running the library at Beyond Baroque, her son was marrying Dorothy McGuire's daughter.
Wow.
And so she brought Dorothy McGuire to the Vine Street, knowing that I was going to read this. And Dorothy McGuire is sitting in one of those tuck and roll booths, you know. And this is what I mean by just, of course, she was in tears at the end. Diane. she was in tears at the end of this, and I don't know why, but this is called Silence in a Talking Picture. It's based on Spiral Staircase, and you must know, you might remember that she played a mute housemaid in that film. And this is it. Silence in a Talking Picture, after the films of Dorothy McGuire. As Claudia, you burned the soup and broke the Venetian blinds, giving us enough time to cool off between the wars, then unravel our eyes to look through cleaner windows. Somewhere in back of the black of memory reservoirs, we are still waiting, as we might have waited in 1952, for Louis Calhern's invitation to a daughter, saving you from any past, lonely funeral impediment to your sweet speech. As we continue to suffer inside our own incurable diseases of disaffiliation, we began to realize that no enchanted cottage would ever inhabit our strained sensibilities. Choosing to remain sociopathic misfits as a tree grows in Brooklyn, we stay open to the weather inside innocent human houses which sometimes fail to surround us. We approach the spiral staircase in our mute American home, where mothers and fathers remain emotionally disabled. So much so that you are persuading us with gun-shy eyes, with amusement park fascination for imperfection, with your invalid mouth finally opening to scream, allowing us to retreat into strange conformity of the modern social murder midnight rerun television streets of our lives. Always where grown-up relatives were telling us to be quiet. Thank you. And I'm going to be quiet right now. So.
Now I know why she cried. Let me get Mike. Thank you so much. Michael C. Ford.